Welcome to the Deep Dive. We're here to cut through the noise, giving you some targeted insights. Today, we're really focusing on how this incredible acceleration we're seeing in AI, how that's actually driving, concrete business results. We're looking right at the semiconductor ecosystem, the real building blocks. And we've got the Q3 2025 earnings info from Cadence Design Systems. They're a foundational player in EDA, electronic design automation. Our mission today is really to get past the headline numbers. We want to understand the strategy behind their success, this vision they have of being the trusted partner from, chip to systems.
That phrase, chip to systems, yeah, that really sums it up, doesn't it? Cadence isn't just, selling software tools anymore. They're selling productivity. They're selling ways to manage this exploding complexity in the market. So we'll look at maybe three key things today. First, the financials, they were strong, led to a raised outlook. Second, how they actually structure their AI strategy. They've got these distinct sort of long-term horizons. And finally, we'll dig into the operations, the products, IP, core EDA, hardware, and even some big M&A moves targeting that system level.
Okay, great. Let's start with the numbers then, the hard data. Q3 was described as excellent. So for you listening, if you want that quick financial snapshot, what were the key highlights showing that momentum?
Yeah, the growth was pretty undeniable. Q3 revenue hit, let's see, $1.339 billion. It's a decent jump from the $1.215 billion they did in the same quarter last year. And profitability-wise, the non-GAAP EPS, that climbed to $1.93, which is, a noticeable step up from $1.64 a year ago. Pretty solid numbers all around.
Okay, solid. But the market always looks beyond just the quarter, right? It wants to see, future commitments, visibility. What does the backlog tell us? Does that show confidence heading into 2026?
Right. That's the really critical forward-looking piece. The backlog grew to a record $7.0 billion. You can think of that as basically guaranteed future business already locked in. And yeah, that record number, it's the foundation for their confidence. It's why they could raise their full-year guidance. They're now projecting around 14% revenue growth for the whole year, and maybe even more impressive, 18% non-GAAP EPS growth for fiscal 25. Raising guidance like that, well, it signals a really deep belief that demand is going to stick around.
Okay, hold on, though. That record $7 billion backlog.
Yep.
We hear a lot about geopolitical stuff, market volatility, particularly in Asia. Was that backlog figure all new, organic growth? Or was there maybe some catch-up mixed in there from previous quarters?
That's a really sharp question, and yeah, it needs some immediate context. Some of that growth, you're right, it was deferred business catching up. The company was pretty clear, actually. They said about $150 million of that backlog growth in Q3 was essentially a catch-up. It was mostly hardware deliveries that got pushed out of Q2, and that was largely because those EDA export restrictions were lifted back in early July. It let them get back to sort of business as usual in certain key regions.
Ah, okay. That makes sense. And that leads us right into the geographic picture then. We saw a pretty noticeable spike in revenue from China this quarter, didn't we?
We definitely did. It was a significant jump. China's slice of the revenue pie went from just 9% in Q2, not up to 18% in Q3, doubled. So that really shows you the immediate strength, the broad-based design work that was kind of waiting in the wings once those earlier regulatory question marks were cleared up.
So, okay, there was a bit of a short-term boost from catching up, but the underlying message is they're still confident enough in the sustained demand everywhere else to raise the full-year guidance, provided, of course, those export rules stay more or less the same. That seems logical.
Precisely. And the core thing driving all of this, the guidance rate, the huge backlog, it all comes back to what the CEO calls the accelerating AI megatrend.
Okay, let's define how they're tackling that megatrend. The CEO mentioned this dual strategy, design for AI and AI for design. How do those two pieces work? What's the difference?
Yeah, they're really two sides of the same coin, and both are huge value propositions for them. Design for AI, that's what their customers are doing, building the next-gen chips, the servers, the hardware that's specifically designed to train and run AI models. Cadence provides, the blueprints, the tools to make those complex chips actually work. Then there's AI for design. That's more internal. It's Cadence using AI itself, embedding it into their own EDA tools. The goal there is to drastically speed up the chip design process itself, make it way more efficient.
Ah, okay. So they're basically selling shovels to the AI gold miners. And they're also using AI to make their own shovels way, way better.
Exactly. That's a good way to put it. And they structure this whole opportunity across three horizons, they call them. Horizon 1, that's where most of the action is right now, where the revenue is coming from. AI infrastructure. Think massive demand for GPUs, dedicated AI accelerators, all the stuff powering cloud data centers. Horizon 2, that's physical AI. This is where it starts getting, well, really interesting, I think. Autonomous driving, industrial robots, drones, things that operate out in the real world. That brings totally different design challenges, different validation problems compared to just a server in the cloud.
Right. And the third horizon.
The third one is science's AI. This is more emerging, focused on things like, say, drug discovery, computational chemistry, personalized medicine, maybe. It's definitely a longer-term view, acknowledging that AI is going way beyond just language models or image recognition. So this whole roadmap, plus the deep partnerships they've built, with the big AI innovators, all the major foundries like TSMC, Samsung, Intel, even Rapidus, and the system leaders too, it shows they're really aiming to be that essential glue across all three of these horizons.
Okay, that framework makes sense. Let's dive into the operations now, see where the chip part of chip to systems is really delivering. Let's start with their semiconductor IP business. How's that doing?
Yeah, the IP business is highly strategic for them, and it's actually expected to grow faster than the company average overall. What's driving it? Well, it's targeting those really advanced high-value manufacturing nodes used in AI, HPC, performance computing, and automotive. And why is it growing so fast? One word: complexity.
Complexity. Okay, what kind of complexity? Can you give us some examples, like the specific tech driving this?
Sure. We're talking about really critical interconnect protocols, things like HBM4 and LPDDR6. HBM4, that's high bandwidth memory, it's absolutely essential for feeding the massive amounts of data that AI accelerators just devour. And LPDDR6, that's low power memory, crucial for mobile devices, edge AI applications. These are really advanced standards. They require highly specialized IP. And then you've got chiplet architectures. You can think of those like Lego blocks for chips. Instead of one giant monolithic chip, you build smaller, specialized tiles chiplets and then connect them together. This dramatically increases the need for super high-speed connectivity IP, which, is right in Cadence's wheelhouse. They actually highlighted a big competitive win at a, quote, marquee memory company for HBM4 and DDR5 IP. That kind of validates their position there.
And didn't they just acquire ARM's Artisan Foundation IP? Does that fit into this? Strengthen their hand?
It absolutely does. That deal brings in really crucial foundational building blocks, things like standard cell libraries, memory compilers. These are optimized for the most advanced manufacturing nodes. So yeah, it's about owning more of the fundamental DNA required to build these incredibly complicated chips.
Got it. Okay, let's pivot now to the other side of that coin. AI for design. This is where the tools themselves get smarter, deliver productivity gains. We saw some really eye-popping stats here, didn't we? Especially around the Cadence Cerebrus AI Studio.
Yes. This is where things get really impressive. This is where AI tools start giving customers performance boosts that, previously only came from spending billions moving to a smaller, newer manufacturing node. Take Samsung US, for instance. They reported a fourfold 4x productivity improvement using Cerebrus.
Wow, 4x productivity is huge. But there was another number that really jumped out at me, a 22% power reduction on an SF4 design. And they got first-pass silicon success, too. Just how significant is a 22% improvement in PPA performance, power, area?
Okay, that 22% PPA number, that might be the single most critical takeaway from this whole deep dive, honestly. Traditionally, right, chip makers would have to migrate from one silicon node to the next, say, 5 nanometer down to 3 nanometer just to get those kinds of significant PPA gains. And that node migration, it costs billions of dollars. It takes years of validation work. It's a massive undertaking. So the fact that Cadence's AI tools, like Cerebrus, can deliver a 22% PPA improvement, which the CEO himself compared to the benefit of a full node migration, well, that means they're providing absolutely immense value. Customers get this huge PPA boost without having to overhaul their whole foundry process. It just fundamentally changes the economics of design. Their AI tools are effectively delivering, you could say, free silicon progress, especially in lowering power, which is critical for big AI systems.
That's genuinely astonishing. If AI tools are giving me node-like benefits without that billion-dollar foundry move.
Yeah, that completely reshapes the competitive landscape. If I'm a customer, I'm absolutely locking into those AI tools as fast as I possibly can. Absolutely. And you see the same kind of trend happening in verification, too. Verification is historically the biggest bottleneck in chip design. It takes the longest time. Their Verisium Semi-I tool delivered dramatic throughput gains. Customers like NVIDIA, Samsung, Qualcomm, they're reporting 5x to 10x improvements in verification speed when you're dealing with chips with billions, literally billions, of transistors, shaving months off your verification schedule. That's a multi-million-dollar win right there.
Speaking of these enormous designs, let's shift from the pure software tools to the actual physical hardware that verifies these monster chips. The hardware verification platforms, those big emulation systems like Palladium, they had a record key 3 as well. Why are these really expensive hardware boxes seeing record demand right now?
Well, they've basically become the de facto standard, the go-to choice for AI designs. Why? Because modern AI chip designs are just too enormous, too complex to verify purely using software simulation anymore. It would take forever. So when you're designing a cutting-edge AI accelerator, you absolutely need emulation hardware. You need the capacity and the speed to run the entire system before you commit to actually manufacturing the silicon, which is incredibly expensive. The fact that they had a record quarter just confirms that this AI arms race is driving demand for the biggest, fastest emulation capacity available. And a prime example they mentioned was deepening their collaboration with OpenAI. OpenAI actually expanded their commitment to the Palladium platform in Q3. It shows the top AI players need to be absolutely sure their hardware works flawlessly at scale, and Cadence's hardware platforms are how they do it.
Okay, that logically brings us to the systems part of that chip-to-systems vision. System design and analysis, or SDA. This seems to be where the most aggressive strategic moves have happened recently, right? Culminating in that big agreement to acquire Hexagon's D&E business, which includes MSC software. What does MSC software actually bring into the Cadence world?
Yeah, this is a very deliberate, very forward-looking strategic play. MSC Software, they're a leader in things like structural analysis and multi-body dynamics. Think physics simulation. How does a physical object like, say, a car chassis or a robot arm or a drone wing, how does it bend? How does it vibrate? How does it interact with physical forces?
Hmm, that does feel like quite a leap from designing microchips. How does structural engineering simulation fit into the EDA world?
It's all about accelerating their push into that Horizon 2 we talked about, physical AI. The strategic vision here is basically to build two really strong pillars within their SDA business. Pillar one is kind of the more traditional electronic side, advanced packaging, 3D ICs, HPC systems. That uses their existing tools like Allegro, Clarity, Celsius. But pillar two, that's going to be dedicated entirely to physical AI, and it's going to leverage these new structural and multi-body dynamics solvers they're getting from MSC. If that acquisition closes as planned, Cadence expects the run rate for this whole SDA business to cross $1 billion in 2026. So this isn't just about selling more software licenses. It's about owning the design tools for complex things that move and interact with the physical world around them.
Right, the billion-dollar run rate definitely catches the eye. But the strategic thinking behind it, connecting structural dynamics simulation to designing autonomous vehicles or robots, that's the really interesting insight here.
It really is. You could say it's the ultimate expression of that chip-to-systems idea. They're aiming to provide the tools not just for the chip inside the robot, but for designing and simulating the robot's entire physical being, its interaction with the world.
Okay, let's start to wrap this up then looking ahead. The two big takeaways seem pretty clear. First, AI is driving huge demand for the end products, the chips themselves, designed for AI. And second, AI is also making the design tools themselves dramatically more effective. AI for design. Where do you see the most significant momentum continuing as we look towards 2026?
Well, the momentum really looks set to continue pretty much across the board, especially with that record $7 billion backlog providing a nice cushion. But I think the most significant qualitative shift, the really interesting one to watch, is that acceleration of the SDA business into physical AI via the MSC acquisition. And quantitatively, the results we're seeing from those AI-driven productivity tools, like that incredible 22% PPA improvement that's going to force rapid adoption by customers. It'll really help lock in market share for Cadence's core EDA software.
Yeah, that's a really powerful combination. Okay, so to leave you, our listener, with a final provocative thought, something to chew on, it builds on that Hexagon acquisition we were just discussing. We talked about simulation for multi-body dynamics, right?
Yes. And that acquisition, it seems rooted in a really fundamental, maybe even profound belief about the future of AI training itself. The belief seems to be that simulation, physics-based simulation, is going to become the best way, maybe the only practical way, to generate the vast amounts of data needed for training future world models. Think about the difference for a second. Large language models, LLMs, they're trained on massive text and code data sets that already exist. But training a robot or an autonomous car, a physical AI system that requires incredibly complex physics-accurate data about how objects move, collide, deform, interact in the real, messy world. These new simulation tools, like the ones from MSC, they essentially provide the synthetic data generation infrastructure required to build those complex world models that physical AI will need. So it suggests the future of these design and simulation tools is directly tied to actually creating the training data for the next generation of AI systems, moving way beyond LLMs. It kind of pulls the whole EDA industry into the realm of fundamental AI training data creation.
Wow. The EDA world evolving to become the primary data generator for robotics and autonomous systems. That's
Yeah,
so
totally.
fascinating potential shift in responsibility for the entire industry. Well, thank you for joining us on this deep dive into Cadence's Q3. We hope you feel thoroughly informed and maybe have some new angles for analyzing the next moves in the semiconductor space.